Welcome into another edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by the Hoosier.com of the On3 Sports Network. John Alden with you, as always. Happy Monday, or whatever day it is that you have chosen to partake in this video content here on the YouTubes. Whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it doesn't matter. Glad to have you. But I imagine many of you are watching this on the day that it is released, Monday evening. And this happened a couple of weeks ago, but I might as well, I guess, remind you again. Another late release today, of course, because of the NBA Finals taking place late on Sunday. I'll get into my thoughts on that here in a bit. But how was your weekend? How was your weekend? Mine was pretty good. For those of you who know or don't know, I have a newborn baby who I guess is technically out of the newborn stage at this point. Miss Daisy Grace, she is nearly 10 weeks old, but she was a few weeks early. And the reason I bring this up, I just wanted to mention a little bit of something that happened over the weekend at a restaurant. And I don't want to make this a bigger deal than maybe it should be, but I did want to share this on the show. And if you all don't care about little personal tidbits of my life or whatever, that's totally fine. Skip ahead a couple of minutes and you can get into the other good stuff, if you will. But we were at a restaurant, my wife and I and a friend of ours, and we had the baby with us, and we enjoyed ourselves. It was a good lunch, but there was a table next to us in the restaurant with some older folks, and I guess they had noticed that we had our baby with us, and for some unknown reason, this group of people seemed to know that our baby was premature or had been premature at some point, and they proceeded to, I guess they wanted to relate. They had mentioned that, or one of the people who was at the table had mentioned that they had a premature baby, and we were like, okay, yeah, that's totally fine. We were just it was very much uncomfortable, but we were like, okay, we'll do the small talk or whatever. And they had mentioned how their child had some problems growing up, and then they proceeded to follow up with that by mentioning, oh, your baby will probably have some problems too. And so that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I guess I'm just using this platform right now as a PSA. If you're somebody who has ever made comments like that may, come across insensitive and you may not know that, maybe that's not the place to be doing that. So wanted to share that, start the show. Maybe that's not the best way to get things rolling here on In Touch with Indiana Sports, but I guess if we're being honest, I mean, there's not a lot of amazing things to talk about today. I mean, we are going to talk about the Pacers and their unfortunate end the series would have ended regardless on Sunday night, but the way in which things played out on Sunday was, of course, less than ideal and will undoubtedly leave a sour taste in people's mouths and fans' mouths for quite some time. But we'll get into that here in just a few moments. Real quick, I'm going to go take a deep breath, and I've got, for those of you who watch the show, you all know I usually like to drink coffee whenever I'm doing the show. And I made a mistake a couple of weeks ago. I told y'all before how I like to consume the mushroom coffee every once in a while. It's a nice little alternative to regular coffee. It has regular coffee grounds in it, but the biggest difference is it has some mushroom extracts and it's supposed to be easier on your stomach and have a few other health benefits and stuff like that as well. But the bag that I normally buy of the mushroom coffee doesn't come with a ton of grounds. And so I was looking online for what I thought was a bigger bag. And it was a bag with more servings. But what I didn't realize is that, and this is what's in this particular cup of coffee, by the way, is that the most recent bag that I bought was not regular coffee. It was instant coffee. And I don't know if you're somebody who has ever drank or prepared instant coffee, but you obviously don't prepare it the typical way by, grabbing a spoonful of grounds and putting it inside your coffee maker, whatever it may be. But instead, you take the package, or in this case, I've got it in a little cylinder that I've kept it all in because I didn't want to waste my money. I spent $30 on this, but I took you take the instant grounds, you put it in your coffee mug, and then you pour hot water over it, and then you mix it up with, thankfully, we have this random electric mixer type thing. It's not a mixer, but it's like a little handheld thing that stirs things for you. I know that's not the best way to describe it, probably, but that's what I'm drinking from today. It's not the best tasting coffee, but I didn't want to waste $30 worth of product on something. So we're making do, and we're going to enjoy it as best we can. And we're going to get rolling here on a Monday here on In Touch with Indiana Sports. Anyway, sorry if this opening portion of the show is not what you typically expect. I haven't opened an episode with non-sports things in a while, and I thought those were some interesting things to share. Whether maybe I shouldn't have shared them, who knows? But either way, we're going to get into, at least I want to go, before we bring in our friends in Drew Rosenberg and Tyler Smith to kind of get their thoughts on what happened in last night's Game 7 loss for the Pacers against the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA Finals. I kind of want to share just kind of my individual take on how things played out. And I'm sure regular listeners of the show, you know that I'm more of a casual Indiana Pacers fan than a diehard. It's definitely not the same like with IU football or IU basketball. It's not the same level of being a fan with the Indiana University program as it is with the Pacers. But we have been following along with their the most improbable run throughout the NBA playoffs. And I've referenced many times how it kind of felt like they were doing a little bit of what they did last year, just kind of taking some momentum and carrying it into the postseason and going on a deep run. Well, that turned into much more as they, of course, defeated the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, the second year in a row that they took down the Knicks in the playoffs, this time just being in a much later round in the playoffs. And then they get to something that they haven't been to in 25 years and only one other time in franchise history, and that's make a finals. And you go up against what I believe is now the third winningest championship team in NBA history. And not only that, but another franchise who has never won an NBA title with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And fast forward to last night's Game 7, and we all knew that Tyrese Halliburton had been kind of nursing a leg injury of sorts, a calf strain is what people were calling it back during Game 6. During Game 6, he did well in the limited minutes that he saw, and thankfully Indiana did not need Halliburton for more than they played him. And maybe not even that much, because it was that dominant of a Game 6 win for the Pacers. And then you get to Game 7, and less than, or really at the halfway point, I guess you could say, of the first quarter, Tyrese Halliburton had already gotten 9 points off of 3 3-pointers, and he was playing like he was ready to go to battle with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder. All of that gets cut short, and 7 minutes into the game, you see Halliburton take what looks kind of just like a routine tumble. It kind of looks like he just tripped initially, but then upon closer inspection and the many, many replays that many found distasteful from the crew with ABC and ESPN, if you will, you saw that it was more than just a simple trip and fall. It was, in fact, what ended up being an Achilles tear, and you saw him slam his hand. I think that was really the first indicator that you knew something was wrong, and Halliburton immediately knew something was wrong as well. When he takes that fall and immediately starts banging his hand on the ground, you can see him get visibly upset on the court. That was kind of the oh crap moment, not only for Indiana fans and the players and the franchise, but everybody inside of the Paycom Center just they immediately knew how big of a deal something like that happening was. And then just throw on top of the unfortunate nature of the injury, the timing of it all, it just makes it hard. It makes it such a hard pill to swallow, knowing that the Pacers came up short in that game 7. And it was a really great game until about midway through the third quarter. And as a matter of fact, I mean, the Pacers had a halftime lead. I mean, you could argue that some of the most inspired basketball from the finals series for the Pacers was the moments or the time leading up to the end of the second quarter for Indiana. You got solid contributions from just about everybody. You could tell that the pressure was on Oklahoma City to deliver because not only were they already the heavy favorites to win the NBA championship, but now they were going to be expected to win in probably a more dominant fashion because Indiana's best player, most clutch closer in Tyrese Halliburton, had been removed from the game and was not going to be returning. And in those, really up until the moment that Oklahoma City found a way to regain momentum, it felt like all of the pressure was on them to deliver. And Indiana remained comfortable until a few guys started hitting some shots. Oklahoma City went from being tied at one point during the third quarter to going up by 9 in a matter of a couple of minutes. And Indiana did make some runs that were, not nearly good enough to get them back into being truly competitive towards the end of the game. But overall, it was the back to what I was saying about the circumstances of Halliburton's injury. It's just very unfortunate to see the game 7 play out the way that it did. Oklahoma City may have eventually won game 7 with Tyrese Halliburton on the floor anyway. We'll never know. This will forever be known now as the what if game for Indiana Pacers fans, and I'm sure people within the franchise alike. And I guess from here, you get ready for the NBA draft on Wednesday, and you hope the best for Halliburton heading into the offseason. And I guess, the offseason in the NBA is much shorter than college basketball. I mean, when you tear something right there, it's the final game of the professional basketball calendar. And when you have an injury like an Achilles tear at that point, I mean, how long is it going to be before Halliburton sees the floor again? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how long a recovery is for something like an Achilles tear, especially if you're going to be playing basketball at the highest level. But I would say there's a pretty good chance, and there's actually maybe I've missed something. I don't know if Indiana has reported something since I've recorded this or even a little bit before, but it wouldn't surprise me if Halliburton doesn't see the floor until, can we say post All-Star break 2026? Maybe I'm way off base there, but either way, it's not an ideal situation for the Pacers heading into next year. But I think we should still, as fans, as casuals, whatever you want to say, we can still be very thankful for what this run was, what it meant to Indianapolis, what it meant to Pacers fans. We had Dustin Schutte on a couple of weeks ago, and he's somebody who's been a lifelong Pacers fan, and maybe didn't ever expect them to get to this stage of the game ever again, and they did, and they just came up just short of winning an NBA title. And again, as I said earlier, will be forever known as the what if game. And I guess we'll leave it at that. That's kind of the gist of it's kind of a quick recap and just kind of my thoughts on everything. And we're also going to get Drew's thoughts. I do want to talk not only about the game from his perspective, but also kind of want to talk about the upcoming draft, what it means for the Pacers, any other names to keep an eye on for, especially when it comes to some of the guys that will be moving into the NBA. get his thoughts on who he thinks may be good fits for different programs and that sort of thing. So, and then we'll also talk Tyler Smith, very close to the Pacers program, been covering it for a long time now, and I'm sure it hit a little different for him as well. So we'll get both of their perspectives, and then we'll just kind of put a pretty little bow on the NBA season, and that's kind of the end of the. I started doing this show almost a year ago, about a month away from it being the anniversary of doing this show. And of course, back when we started it, we were doing 3 episodes a week, whereas now we're just doing 1. But we're close to resetting the sports calendar, and thankfully we had the Indiana Pacers to carry us a little further into the collegiate off season than we normally do. But we're just a month away from Big Ten football media days, and you all know me. Indiana football is my number one thing when it comes to what I enjoy the most out of the sports calendar, if you will. So I'm excited to get that rolling here again very soon. But let's go ahead and welcome in our first guest of the day, Mr. Drew Rosenberg, and we'll continue our conversation about the NBA Finals, the Indiana Pacers, and a whole lot more. Joining me once again from the Hoosier.com, it is none other than Drew Rosenberg. Welcome back. It's been a long NBA postseason, but it's finally come to a head. Welcome back to In Touch with Indiana Sports, my friend.
Thanks, John. I was hoping it'd be, a little more of a happier occasion, on this.
I really thought it was going to be. I was very convinced, and I think most fans of any team, whenever you wake up on the day of the championship game, it doesn't matter who you're rooting for, it doesn't matter how big of an underdog your team is, you find a way to convince yourself that your team's going to get it done. And I was convinced that the Pacers were going to get it done, but I was also not concerned about Tyrese Halliburton potentially getting injured, especially in the first 7 minutes of the game. So that was definitely one of the top storylines from last night. But I guess I'll just start with your just initial reaction to how things played out last night.
I mean, that's such a heartbreaking way for, the season to end. Obviously, congratulations to the Thunder, their fans. They were the best basketball team from the first night of the season to the last night. Deserving champion, but to lose Tyrese Halliburton like that 7 minutes into the game, he had hit 3 threes, and it looked like Halliburton was, going to have another one of those, legendary playoff performances and one of the best playoff runs we've seen in recent memory. All that just for, a step he's made a million times in his career. And, he talked about it. He recognized, the risks of playing through that calf strain. He, talked about Kevin Durant, who in 2019, played through a similar injury and had a similar result, rupturing his Achilles. And it's such a brutal way, for the season to end, because, Halliburton's the engine of that team, and it's hard, and it's going to be hard for Pacers fans to deal with this and, live this down, because it's going to be hard. And it's not an injury that he'll be back next season. He'll probably miss most of next season. Same with Jason Tatum and Lillard, who also tore their Achilles. It's such a brutal injury. And, people can say, oh, maybe he shouldn't have played. It's the Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Halliburton has been waiting.
You can't. I mean, this is what you play for.
Yeah.
When you're. I mean, I don't know if Tyrese Halliburton ever dreamed he'd be playing in an NBA Finals, but I can't imagine there's anything more. Like, what would you be holding out for? I mean, you want to elongate your career and you want to maximize the amount of years you get out of your professional ability, but at the same time, this opportunity might not ever come again, whether you get injured or not in this game.
Yeah, and it's such a hard injury because it's such a slow process, the recovery. And, you see that, and you knew immediately when he went down, he slapping the floor, he knew right away, the game is over for him. And it sucks the soul out of the team. Some teams can rally from it, but it's so hard in that moment. Obi Toppin spoke about it at length after, and he talked about it. He said the entire game he was thinking about it, and it was just hard for him to play. And it is, because that's your leader. That's, the guy who has been there from the start. He's gotten you to this point with so many clutch moments, and just seeing him go down like that, it's the worst feeling in basketball. And such a game that, NBA fans, we haven't had a Game 7 of the Finals since 2016. It was a game we are looking forward to so much, and for the first 7 minutes, this is looking like it's going to be one of the best basketball games, of recent history, and all for it to go, just gone in a blink of an eye.
Now, the response initially was about as good as you could have
Yeah.
expected from the Pacers. I mean, they end up leading at halftime, for crying out loud. What do you make of, like, how are they able to pull that off? Was it because I heard a lot of people mentioning, especially on the broadcast, that is because the pressure was on OKC to deliver at
Yeah.
that point. Whenever Indiana loses
Mhm.
the heart and soul of their team, you're already the heavy favorite to win. And now you're even more so of a heavy favorite. And so when I felt like for until OKC took over kind of midway through the third quarter, it felt like the Pacers were playing with even more house money than they already had.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard injury, and from the Thunder perspective, you see that you're like, oh, okay, we got it, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the 2008 Olympics, the USA versus Spain game. USA went into this, Rudy Fernandez was Spain's best player, and it was stop this guy, and then he goes down, and it kind of sucks the energy out of the gym, and Spain makes a little comeback after USA had been dominating, and it was similar, and I think that halftime break was the worst thing that could happen for the Pacers because you go in, you see Halliburton, you see your guy, and I mean it's going to take a lot out of you, and whatever Halliburton, Carlisle says in the locker room, it's still going to be so tough to stop playing because adrenaline keeps you moving, and we saw that immediately after the Pacers kept fighting, and they fought as long as they could, but without Halliburton, it's such a tough matchup against this Thunder team that is so deep and has so much talent around it. It was an impossible task, and the Pacers did everything they could to fight and make it a game for as long as they could.
Speaking of impossible tasks, this may be an impossible question, but how do you think the game would have played out? I mean, there was so much time that Tyrese Halliburton didn't play. I mean, but we kind of saw the direction in which his game was going to go. I've been telling people today that I felt like if whether or not the Pacers would have won, I felt like Tyrese, at least for himself, probably would have gotten a 30-point game out of him, maybe more. I don't know how that would have translated to the final score of the game, but what would have been different had he been able to play through the entire 48 minutes?
I mean, it's an impossible question, but at the same time, you look at the way Halliburton was starting, and he wasn't the same. Even before he went down with the Achilles injury, it was clear he wasn't himself. Nembhard was playing as a primary ball handler, but Halliburton was still scoring, making an impact, and he still is someone. Even when he's not able to be 100%, he's still someone OKC needs to throw one of their best defenders at him because he can still score and do so many things even when he's not 100%. And now it shifts to Nembhard and, Nesmith and, the guys who typically have the second defender, third defender on them instead of the first. And, it changes everything the Pacers want to do. It makes it harder for Siakam because now the Thunder can trap Siakam a little differently without the threat of, having to shift over to Halliburton. It changes everything, and it's such, a blink of an eye. It's nothing you can prepare for. It completely changes the game, and it's, injuries suck. Injuries are the worst part about sports. It's why you need to be lucky to win a championship, and the Thunder stayed extremely healthy, and that was a big part of their success this season. But it's so brutal to see a player like Tyrese Halliburton go down like that, and it's just gut wrenching feeling.
On the other side of things, and you've mentioned this before too, how this Thunder team, it could be the beginning of a few years long dynasty. Do you still have that kind of feel? I mean, obviously it's hard to win back-to-back titles and all that sort of thing, but do you foresee them being at the top of the NBA for the next few regular seasons? I know they have a very young team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see who in next year. I think the odds came out. They were plus 200 to win the championship. Next closest was the Knicks and Rockets at plus 850. So, clearly the experts think the Thunder are hands down the best team in the league, and I don't disagree. Obviously there is a long off season where I'm expecting it to be, I think I've talked about it here, it's going to be one of the craziest off seasons. We already saw Kevin Durant get moved, and I think a bunch of other very talented players are going to be on the move. So we don't really know, how the rosters are going to shake up next season. But at this point in time, it's hard to say who can really compete with the Thunder if they're able to stay healthy.
And with really a ton of unknowns for Indiana right now, especially when you don't know how long Halliburton's going to be missing from by the time you get into the next regular season. It's probably too early to start talking about making another deep postseason run, but with what you already know will come back. And I know there's a few things, really several variables, including Miles Turner, him needing to get paid, that sort of thing. Do you think that this Pacers team can, I hate to say capitalize, because the toughest, if you don't have the injury, yes, I think it's a lot easier to say the Pacers can find a way to replicate the success in some way, shape, or form next year. But I mean, if Halliburton, I said this earlier on the show, if he's missing through at least the All-Star break, that's a big chunk of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised to see Halliburton next season at all, if I'm going to be completely honest. Well, I mean, you look at the timeline, Kevin Durant, he missed the entire season after his Achilles injury, and I think a little more because it was the COVID year too. So he missed like the delayed bubble and got even more of a full season. I think same thing with Tatum. I'd be surprised if we see him next year. Same with Lillard. It's such a hard injury to recover from, and it's one of those things you don't want to push it and overdo it, because you can easily re-injure yourself in that process. And it's just, Halliburton's young. It's not and next season, I hate to say it, I think it's a lost season for the Pacers. And it's hard because you have to pay. Siakam's 31.
That's the gamble. When let's say you go, yeah. I hate to interrupt you, but like, that shows the magnitude of playing in the game that they were in, the risk that Tyrese Halliburton and the franchise was willing to take at that one shot of potentially winning an NBA title, to where it may set you back a lot farther than you would have ever expected it to.
Yeah, and it's hard to say what the Pacers will do. I mean, Miles Turner's talked about it. He wants to stay in Indiana. He's going to have suitors. I know the number of teams have already kind of, put him as someone, hey, like he could be a key piece for us. I think the Lakers were one of them. Like, teams needing a center, Miles Turner is a great option, but he's been in Indiana for 10 years. I'd be surprised to see him go, but now with this injury, he's another guy who's up there. He's 29. This is probably his last big contract he gets in the league. So it's tough to say what he does now, where it's like next season is super cloudy for the Pacers. And, even with Siakam, Nembhard, they still have a lot of talent, Nesmith, Obi Toppin on the roster, where it's like this team could still be a playoff team. But that ceiling is, not nearly as high without Halliburton. And it's hard to see them, come out of the East without Halliburton again.
I was talking with somebody about this because I've heard many people make jokes that Tyrese Halliburton like made a deal with the devil or something like that to be able to hit all of the game-winning shots that he did to get the Pacers where they did. And let's just have a little fun for a second. Imagine that that's true. And like, whenever you're making this so-called deal with the devil, black magic, whatever it may be, you get told that there could be a tragic end, but you don't know what that is. If you're able to get to where you're, all of these game-winning shots can carry you to. And this is the ultimate. It's not a payoff. It's the opposite of a payoff. It's the bad karma for making that deal with the devil, so to speak. And it's just very interesting when you throw that kind of little, I hate to call it a joke, but the banter that water cooler banter, if you will. It's interesting to think about how things really played out in that sense. But I do want to ask you a little bit about something that I can't believe that this is already coming up, by the way. You and I were talking before we got rolling. The NBA Finals just ended on Sunday. And on Wednesday, you have the NBA draft. It has to be maybe, I know for Major League Baseball, they do the draft, or at least they used to do it in the middle of the college NCAA tournament. But this has to be one of the weirdest or quickest turnarounds when it comes from the end of the season to doing the draft for next season.
Yeah, and it's you mentioned it right before we started recording. I was like completely forgot it was this week, and like they have to do it because you got to get summer league and camp, and it's only, right away you got to get the quick start. But it's so funny, college basketball ended in April. It's June now, so they get such a long break before the draft, where it's the NBA. The season ends Sunday night, and 3 days later we're on to next season. This draft, it's, Cooper Flag. It's the Cooper Flag draft. Let's call it how it is. He's the name. The Mavericks traded Luka. They, you said made a deal with the devil. It seems like they also made a deal with the devil, trading Luka Doncic away to get Cooper Flag. But, there's this draft, last season we looked at it and it was like, oh, that draft, there's some bunch of guys you see as being like high level role players, but there weren't guys you were like, oh, this guy's a superstar potential. There is in this draft. Cooper Flag for starters, Dylan Harper from Rutgers, Ace Bailey from Rutgers, VJ Edgecombe. Like, there is a lot of talent in this draft. And I also expect there to be some moves made, between now and Wednesday when the draft happens. There's going to be some trades. I look at the Thunder as a team that potentially could make some trades. They have picked 15 and 24 in this draft. And you look at their roster and it's hard for them to, keep adding first round picks. So I could see them, maybe trading those picks into future draft capital. I can't speak, but, trading those picks and turning into future picks later, or maybe turning into, some role players and packaging some of their younger guys to, maybe move up and get someone if they really like someone. So the Thunder are a team, to watch out for that could potentially make some moves. Spurs are another one. They've been, very active and trying to, look at trades. I know there's been rumors of a Jaylen Brown Celtics trade. It's the Celtics are probably going to have to make some major, trades with Kristaps Porzingis, Jrue Holiday's big contracts. It seems they're unlikely to trade Jaylen Brown and Derek White unless they're getting, a huge offer. And those offers, rumors are they've, been coming. We've already saw Kevin Durant and the number 10 pick get traded Sunday, like the day of the finals, which is crazy. But for Indiana fans, this was kind of an interesting thing for the Kevin Durant trade. The huge sticking point. So Durant ended up being with the Rockets. He's happy. That's, where one of the places he wanted to go. But there was a lot of talk between the Heat and Suns, and one of the biggest sticking points for the Heat was not trading their young players, including Khalil Ware, former Indiana center. He's a guy, he had a really good rookie year, especially the second half. They see him as someone they can build around with, Bam Adebayo, that front court of those two. And it's surprising, Kevin Durant is he's older, but he's still a superstar, and he's someone, who can elevate your team just by adding him. And he's, one of the best players we've ever seen in this game. And the fact the Heat aren't willing to move off, Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez, and some other guys, but especially Khalil Ware, it says a lot about how they value him in the future of their team.
Do you foresee the Heat being able to do enough next year to I know they kind of squeaked getting into the playoffs this year. Do you think they can take a step forward and maybe Khalil Ware have a bigger role and on a team that makes more noise into the next postseason?
I mean, it's the Heat are in a weird spot. They have Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and then they have a lot of younger guys around them. It's how those guys like Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez, Nikola Topic, how do those guys take that next step? And do they decide, hey, you know what, we want to make a trade for, a star player? Because there is, guys that are going to be available at the via trade this offseason. Giannis is the big name. Where is he going to request a trade? What happens there? Spurs are a team to monitor. Now you have Jalen Green on the Suns, which the Suns have 3 shooting guards and Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Jalen Green. So he's another guy that could be on the move. So it's, the offseason started today. And it's going to be really interesting to follow as we have I think one of the most hectic off seasons because it's been talked about so much. The new cap rules kick into effect this year. And so teams are, teams like the Suns, for example, who have big contracts and aren't good enough to succeed, are trying to get under the apron and get their, finances in the right spot. Same with the Celtics now that Tatum's going to be out for likely the entire season. So we're going to see some major pieces on the move, and it's what makes this offseason and next season so interesting is we really don't know what the NBA is going to look like even 3 months from now.
Drew, before I let you go, is there anything coming up with talking about the Hoosiers or things to look at on thehoosier.com?
Nothing specific at the moment. We might have some breaking news podcasts. Sammy Jackson, 3-star recruit, is deciding this week. So that is something to keep an eye out for, Indiana basketball recruiting. He's someone, Indiana's been heavily involved in. So his decision, I believe, is coming this week. And then some other guys like Latrell Alden, just stuff on the Hoosier where, got you covered, traveling to different AU events, you getting inside stuff from recruits, football and basketball, their quotes, their thoughts on the Indiana basketball and football. So a bunch of good stuff going on in the Hoosier.
Drew, I appreciate you as always. It's been a pleasure having you on really every other week during this NBA playoffs run. I'm sure it'll be a little bit before you and I check in, but hey, if there's ever a lot of recruiting going on, maybe I'll have to have you and Kyler get on and educate me. I've not really been following along with recruiting the way that I normally do because I've been so invested in this playoffs run, but it's about that time to really get back into not only college basketball, but college football mode here in just a few weeks.
Yeah, Indiana football is they've been hot on the recruiting trail. I want to say 16. That could be wrong, but around there, number of commitments, a ton in early June, and it doesn't seem like the program is done yet. And a bunch of stuff on a bunch of those commitments. Some inside interviews, bunch of that stuff on the Hoosier, and a ton of great stuff going on the Hoosier. And
Good
talking about
stuff,
the
like you
Hoosiers.
said. And we'll check in again soon, my friend.
Thanks.
A big thanks to Drew Rosenberg, as always, for his time and for making many appearances over the last couple of weeks. He is our resident NBA expert, as I like to call him. And so we may probably we'll check in with him again for other things. I know he is talking about the Hoosiers, as I mentioned multiple times. But we got plenty of different people we can cycle through with that as well. So we'll definitely give Drew a bit of a break when it comes to making time to get on. But we definitely appreciate him and his efforts of coming on and making things easier for me at times. So, but now let's go ahead and transition into Tyler Smith of Indy Sports Legends, here to talk more about the Pacers and everything that happened this past weekend and what is to come for the franchise as they move into the offseason. Joining me from his vehicle, it is Tyler Smith from Indy Sports Legends. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me. How's it going?
It's going well. Unfortunate circumstances this time around. Unfortunately, the Pacers, due to a number of factors, of course, unable to get the job done in Game 7 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I guess I'll start off just by opening up to you. What are kind of your overall thoughts on what took place last night?
I mean, heartbreaking is a word that's kind of an understatement. We just went from quite possibly the best run, and I don't know how long, definitely the best run in franchise history, to probably the worst night in franchise history. I mean, you lose the Game 7. You feel like you had a chance to win if Halliburton played and didn't get hurt in the first quarter. So there will always be that what if he played. And then you have this agony of losing him for probably all of next season, which will have other ramifications as well. You got guys crying in the hallway, not just because they lost, but because of him. And after just being through so much, it kind of reminded me of like watching this incredible movie and then the ending ruins it. Like what was that ending after this incredible movie we've been watching? It's just so unfortunate because of how magical the run was to end that way. Just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, and there was, of course, other than the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder were able to win the entire thing in the season that they had, it was without a doubt the headline of the night, what happened with Halliburton. Just 7 minutes into the game, he had already put together 9 points from three-pointers. It felt like he was on track for another one of his legendary postseason performances. I was kind of thinking maybe he was headed towards 30. I mean, of course, the number we'll never know because he never got to play the entirety of the game, but you can only you already said this, and I said this a few minutes ago in my solo portions of the show. This game is forever going to be known in Pacers lore as the what if game because you have everything seemingly go your way, even when things were always stacked against you during this improbable run, and the door just gets slammed shut on you with the Halliburton injury. And of course, I don't want to take away anything from what happened in really up until halftime. I feel like the way that the team responded was about as well as you could have expected a response. And it felt like at that point, before you got to halftime, there was a ton of pressure on the Thunder because they were already the heavy favorites, not only from the beginning of the season, but in this series. And that pressure to really fulfill that kind of expectation was only mounted after, of course, Indiana's best player goes out. And the initial kind of response from what was left of the Pacers roster, of course, I thought was very promising. Of course, nothing worked out in the end, but I thought it gave fans some hope for a little while, it felt like.
Yeah, it did. I went to the watch party at Gamebridge. I was very tempted to go to Oklahoma. I'm glad I didn't now. That would have been an awful drive back. But I went to the field house, and They were so fired up. The place was rocking us on the third Halliburton three. It was just like had a feeling of this could be the night that happens, and it's just like the fans tried to cheer, and it's kind of like the players, like they're giving it their all, but you just know in the back of your mind how unfortunate it is, and how good the Thunder are makes it very difficult when you lose anybody to, like, they can go on these runs out of nowhere, offensively and defensively. They can really put the clamps on and make it difficult to score. So it felt okay at halftime as far as their chances, but in the back of your mind, you're like, this is going to be a really, really difficult game to overcome. And Halliburton had that look early on, and a lot of fans know this. When he gets going early, that's usually a sign that he's going to be that way and be in attack mode the whole game. So the big what if, and I'll throw another one in that fans hate to hear about as well, is Game 4. We said at the
Yeah.
time that night when they blew that lead, Game 4 could be the one that haunts forever, and you never know how things play out after that. But had they held on to that, Game 6 becomes a potential winner at home, and
Yeah.
of course, you probably get a different game from the Thunder. So who knows? It could have gone to 7 anyway. But both of those games, Games 4 and 7, will both be the great what ifs in a franchise history seemingly full of what ifs. There's always something in the way for this Pacer team, but hats off to them and the whole franchise, every player, every coach, for an absolutely phenomenal year.
And you already mentioned the potential ramifications, and the fact that the torn Achilles is something that is going to take a while for Tyrese Halliburton to recover from. Not to mention some other roster questions heading into next year, and then you also got the NBA draft on Wednesday. What's kind of, I mean, you don't want to move on from something. It's not easy to move on from something like this too quickly. It is very strange to me that the NBA draft is only a couple of days after Game 7, but I understand you got the summer league and all that sort of stuff. But when you kind of think, or when you kind of look towards next season, just early thoughts. I talked with somebody else earlier, and it's somebody who wasn't necessarily a fan of the Pacers, and their mindset from an outsider's perspective was, it feels like it could be a lost season already for Indiana. I hate to even mention that because it seems like you're just putting a damper on something that was so fun to watch over the last couple of months. But could that really be the reality for Indy next year?
Depends on how you look at it. If you're looking at it as, do they have a chance to win a title? It's probably a lost season. Can it be a solid season where it's still a playoff team, a team that can still make some noise, be fun to watch, build some momentum, and progress throughout the year? Yeah, they can. They absolutely have enough talent to do that. Just in the moment, you're thinking of how fun that was. The likelihood of that chance again is probably 2 years away, because I don't see Halliburton suiting up at all next season. Even if he progresses well, I don't see them pushing it late in the year. Um, so that's unfortunate, but there's the front office, I think, had a plan in place, and then now the question is, does that change? Um, and they don't have much time. I mean, that's
Yeah.
partially the good thing of playing deep, but also, if they're going to pivot and change what they want to do this offseason, they have very little time to decide. They don't have a first round draft pick. They traded that, which that's okay. That allows them a chance to trade future picks, and it was a pretty savvy move overall. But the biggest question right now is going to be Miles Turner. Before
Yeah.
the finals, Shams was reporting that they were expected to go into the tax, lock up Turner. They said they can't let him leave. Then he has a really bad finals, and then you lose Halliburton. So a lot of fans are now kind of split, saying that they should not pay him, especially because they think it'll be a non-contending year. But my counter to that is, you better have a really good replacement in mind. And if not, he's still a big reason they got to where they got, even though he didn't play well in the finals. And I also have a issue with going and telling those guys in that locker room that, hey, we're gonna split up a bunch of players here after what you just accomplished. And the guy that's been here for 10 years being a big part of the team, I just have a hard time. I know you got to make tough decisions. The front office has to make decisions that's best for the franchise moving forward. But how do you basically tell those guys, hey, we lost Halliburton to injury and we're going to go a different direction from the 5 spot? It's really tough. I expect them to still pay Turner, maybe make some moves that are still geared more towards 27, but still trying to compete. It's kind of the Pacer, the MO, that front office, even before this run, is we want to compete. We want to be tough and tough-minded. They got the pieces to do that, so we'll see. But they do not have much time. I'm looking forward to hearing, hopefully, Kevin Pritchard talk and within the next week to see if there's any hints as to what they might do.
It's crazy to think how something that was so risky. I feel like not many people were really thinking about what kind of the big picture would look like if Tyrese Halliburton were to, in fact, get injured more so than he already was. And then it really changes the outlook of a lot of future seasons, as you just kind of laid out, because when you have decisions like Miles Turner and different roster moves that you can make, it makes it this every decision's a big one when you're a front office guy for an NBA franchise. But to you, does it feel like this might be the biggest decision when it comes to trying to figure out long-term success for this Pacers franchise without having to worry about like a rebuild of some sort?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that's a little unclear, trying to find some clarity on, is how much money could the Pacers get with the injury exception or whatever it's called. If Halliburton's out for the year, there's some, is there a way that they can keep Miles Turner and stay under the tax with the idea of maybe the following year going into the tax, making a big move at that point? Because Herb Simon, the reports were they're going to go in the tax this coming year for the first time in a long time, maybe like the second time in forever. Has that changed at this point? Or can you really just say, hey, we're going to make these big moves because he's out? That's a tough sell, not only to the fans, but again, the guys that have worked so hard to make that run. So I think it all starts with Turner first. And can you pay him while staying under the tax? Do you have to go into the tax? Do you have to trade an Obi Toppin's contract away in order to stay under if you want to keep Miles? I mean, there's so many moving parts to it when, as of a few days ago, the plan was pretty much to run it back and have this two or three year window with this group of feeling really good about your chances. Now it's like the window's not closed. It can reopen in a year, but at that point you got some guys that are a little older. You got uh, a contract or two after next year that'll be up or looking for extensions. So it was all set up perfectly for next year to be a really good position. And now it's just kind of like, kind of up in the air. So really unfortunate for all that to happen. Pacers, if Game 6 was a historic night for the franchise, and now it's like fans wish they can go back and lose that game.
Yeah.
That's how awful that injury is. Like, we would have rather lost on our home court and watch them celebrate, take away that historic win and how good it felt if Halliburton could be healthy. But unfortunately,
isn't that crazy? The retrospect of what do they say? Hindsight's 2020. That's what it is. It's crazy when you think big picture stuff. People are willing, I guess, because you've already had that euphoria too. It's a very fine line to toe. Last thing, this is a stupid question. You're welcome to tell me that it is. But is there any scenario where if Halliburton's, I guess it kind of would depend on how the season is playing out next year, but would there be any scenario where the Pacers decide to trade away Tyrese Halliburton?
Nope.
I wouldn't think so.
No, he's the guy. He signed through, I think, 2029. He's definitely, partially that's why that injury is also so devastating, because of what he means. And since he walked through the door, how things have changed, how he's already talked about, I want to be Pacer forever. And so, yeah, I do trust the front office to, even though it's probably 2 years from now, to kind of build what the next iteration of the team with him at the lead point guard will look like. But yeah, I think he's a long-term guy, and some other guys they have currently as well will probably be here for a long time. But now it's not so simple. Some big decisions are in front of them, and it just puts a big damper. But we can't forget about how unforgettable this year was.
Yeah.
And I love how they said on the Ringer, they said how this is the team they're going to remember. Like, yeah, the Thunder won, but we're going to be remembering the Pacers for 2025.
Patience is what it's going to take for Pacers fans heading into at least the next season, and maybe beyond that. But again, like you said, it's been fun to see how things played out. outside of not winning the title, I think it's about as magical of a run as you could have gone on, especially when you consider the fact that they weren't supposed to be there by any stretch of the imagination. So there's pros and cons. Obviously, big picture is a little muddy, but overall, it's been a very enjoyable postseason if you're a Pacers fan. But Tyler, I appreciate you as always, and I appreciate you making time, especially very frequently over the last several weeks as the Pacers went on this ride. And we'll check in again sometime in the future.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
Big thanks to Tyler Smith for joining us as well. And same as I mentioned with Drew for all of the many appearances he made over the last several weeks as the Pacers made their way through the playoffs. It's definitely been a pleasure having him on and getting his more in-tune insights than mine, if that even makes sense. So, or in touch. Maybe I should have made the pun right there, right? But that's going to wrap it up for us today. Definitely going to be a different type of show for us. So as we move into next week, not a different type of show, but going to be transitioning into some different topics. We'll dive into some different stuff for the next several weeks as we get prepared for college football to return here in just a couple of short months. But until then, this has been another edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by thehoosier.com.